Welcome to our eighth episode of Winning Ways with the Washington State Football Coaches Association. And it's my honor here to be with Coach Jeff Nelson. He's won 7 state titles as a head coach, and then he's also won an 8th as an assistant coach recently. So we're going to jump into his story a little bit. Quick reminder, though, first, if you're not yet a member of the Washington State Football Coaches Association, go ahead and sign up for that. So many reasons to do it. I'm not going to go through the huge list right now. I've kind of said it before, but sign up. You can sign up at washcoach.net, and we would love to see every high school and middle school coach in the state be a member. We want to really grow our sport and grow our association. So, all right, without any further ado, let me share some of the accolades of Coach Nelson and some of his coaching experience. He's been coaching for 36 years. He's currently out of coaching. He's 1 year out right now at this point. 27 of those years were as a head football coach, all in 8-man football. And I'm excited to have this conversation because I'm not super familiar with 8-man football. I always watch the state championships every year, have since they were in the Kingdom. But, it's a unique thing. And I believe excellence is excellence, whatever level you're at. And certainly he has that excellence. His resume speaks for itself. But he's won 7 state championships at lacrosse-washtucna. He won 4 in a row. 2002, 3, 4, and 5, and then he won a 5th in 08, and he won 2 in a row in 2018 and 2019 at Odessa. Some people say that his 2019 Odessa team may be the best 1B team in state history. And then he's also served as an assistant coach, interspersed amongst there. At one point, he stepped out of head coaching and coached his son's 5th and 6th grade team, and did that for a while. And then the last couple of years, he's been an assistant at Wilbur Creston Keller. And if you know much about 1B football in our state, they've made it to the last 2 state championships, and they finished second his first year as an assistant there, and then they won the state title last year. So long coaching history. It all started, though, in 1989 as an assistant at Garfield Palouse. And speaking of the word Palouse there, Coach is from the Palouse. If you know Washington State, he's over there, farm country in eastern Washington. And it's pretty, things are spread out over there. So there's a lot of our smaller schools. So if you're not familiar with our state, maybe you're listening from out of state, we have multiple levels of schools. We have 4A, which is our largest. 3A is still pretty large. 2A is where I coached for a long time. 1A is kind of small. And then there's 2 levels of B schools. There's 1B and 2B. 2B plays 11-man football, and 1B is the smallest of the schools, and they play 8-man football, which is a really exciting brand of football. I want to jump into that a little bit with Coach in a moment. Also, some of the accolades, he was inducted into the Washington State Football Coaches Association Hall of Fame in 2018. And if you're wanting to know where he's from, some of these are small on a map to look up. So at his time at Odessa, if you're familiar with driving across from Seattle to Spokane on I-90, you pass Moses Lake right before you hit Ritzville, take Highway 21 north for about 17 to 20 miles, and there you go. So anything that I've missed out on in your background that we should touch on before I jump into questions for you?
Nothing really. When I first started my career, it's always been an 8-man, but I grew up in Walla Walla, played 11-man football. And if I were to go back from my time in Walla Walla playing high school football, I never would have thought I'd be where I am today, coaching 8-man. I didn't know anything about it back then. So my life totally took a different direction than where I thought I was going to go when I was 18, 19 years old or in college and things like that. So, I wouldn't change anything for the world right now.
And speaking of growing up in Walla Walla, went to Walla Walla High School, and you had a couple of big name coaches you played for there, Blaine Shorty Bennett, and then there was an assistant, Mac Bledsoe. And I think Bledsoe, wasn't his son an NFL quarterback for a long time?
It was pretty good one. Yeah, Drew Bledsoe. When Mac joined our program when I was a senior in high school, he was our wide receiver coach. I played wide receiver for him, and Drew Bledsoe was in the 6th grade at the time. And you could even tell then he wasn't a quarterback. He was a tight end and a wide receiver, more tight end type style. But you could just tell that kid was a little different than all the rest of them. He was big and strong. And so it's, I've met him when he was younger. I've seen him once or twice in the wall. And it's kind of cool to say, hey, I'm from the same town that Drew Bledsoe is. But, I used to know his dad a little bit. So I've been around some really good coaches, and Shorty Bennett's one of them, and definitely Mac Bledsoe and people that I found out going to Wazoo that they're connected with. So, those connections never end.
You know, it's funny you say that you saw him as a young guy and he was just different. I remember as an assistant coach years ago at Mount Vernon, we went over to Eastern Washington's camp, and Prosser was at that camp as well. And there was a kid who was doing the camp drills that was not a high schooler. He was probably fifth or sixth grade, and it was a young Kellen Moore. And you could tell, that kid's just a little bit different. And, now he's a head coach in the NFL and played with Boise State and all that. So it is interesting to see Eastern Washington producing some pretty good talent that's gone on and is still in the game. So, um, is there anything specifically that you picked up maybe in your experience playing for Coach Bennett or Bledsoe that has impacted you in the way you coach these days?
I think it was just always do things the right way and work hard. And in the end, those are things it's going to work out positive for you. You might not win all your games, but did you do the right thing at the end of the day? Bledsoe was very motivational. I always look back and he was one that could pump you up and get you to do things that normally you wouldn't do. So, I've tried to incorporate some of that stuff into my coaching, but definitely not at his level. So, but you look back on those times and they definitely set the core for where I've gotten.
Great. One of the things that for a long time being a guy from the West Side is when you go play a team from Eastern Washington, you expect a good hard-nosed group of kids. They work hard, blue collar, and growing up in Walla Walla, you say that you came from a blue collar family. Dad owned a tire shop there and owned and operated that. And you grew up doing all kinds of different sports, even including dabbling a little bit in rodeo. And your sister was a rodeo queen. Tell me if there's anything from the way that your dad raised you and from the culture that you were brought up in that also impacts just kind of the way you laid the foundation for your programs.
Yeah, there was no messing around. You did the right things. It was yes, sir, no, sir. You looked people in the eye, you shook their hands. You were expected to do everything the right way all the time. There was no slacking off. It was all about hard work. You didn't get, there was no time off. You worked your butt off. And we grew up, we had horses and a few cows and rodeo and things like that. And that was because of my sister, but I dabbled in it and you learned to be tough and you learned, the right way to do things. And and there was no, oh, I'm hurt. You get up and you get going and you do it again. And it was from the beginning, in the morning, we had to feed horses and cows and water them and take care of them. And I'd be like, man, I wanted to, there's no days off. The horses can't take days off. You don't take days off. And that carried over in how I'm coaching now and my expectations. And like you said, that's kind of an Eastern Washington thing, at least for me, or how I perceive it.
What events did you do, or what was your best event?
And oh, I don't know if I ever had a best event. I know I got into like I'd start riding steers and I was like, man, I want to be a bull rider. But and my mom just looked at my dad and she goes, that's it. He is not gonna do that stuff and bust himself up and live that type of a life. And I was like, well, that was short-lived. But
Mhm.
uh like I said, I just kind of dabbled in it. I was never real serious. I tried roping it. I wasn't any good at it. But my first love has always been and always will be, and it was football. My dad didn't play football, but he was interested in it. And, I grew up watching Drew Pearson and the Dallas Cowboys and Golden Richards. Then I got to, so I loved the Cowboys, started watching Lynn Swan and the wide receivers. I'm like, Ahmad Rashad and the Vikings, Sammy White, the Vikings. And I just loved what the wide receivers could do. And then here I become a coach. But that's all I ever want to do is be a wide receiver for the Dallas Cowboys in the NFL. I get to high school, I'm like, well, now I realize I'm not going to be a Cowboy and I'm probably not going to go to college and be a wide receiver. So, I got to stay connected to the game somehow. But it's funny now. I wanted to be a wide receiver. Now I hardly ever throw the football. We are ground, get the ball going that way and run over the top of people. But
Mhm.
anyway, was I a rodeo guy? A little bit, but it was
Yeah.
just for kicks. It was
Yeah.
something to do. So when my sister was being the queen of the rodeo, I had something to do.
Yeah, that's cool. So I said earlier, I think excellence is excellence at any level, right? You're going to have a work ethic. You're going to have to be disciplined. You're going to have to be organized. Um, but what are maybe two of the three things that you found most important in the culture that you built at your programs, and how did you build those into your programs?
I just think. and it was, we set out the expectations at the beginning of the year with the kids, and you're gonna show up to practice every single day. You're gonna work hard. You don't get time off in football. And my practices are not made for your enjoyment. They aren't fun. The fun time comes game time Friday when we're playing the way the game should be played. And I just made sure that the kids understood that. And it was one of the other thing I tried to get across to the kids and the parents too was football. It's not just about the winning or the losing. It's kind of, we're also teaching you football and we're teaching you all, the work ethic and things like that, but also it's life skills. We're teaching you hard work is going to pay off in the end for you. We're going to teach you that do things the right way. We're going to teach you be on time. Being on time is late. Instead of being on time, I need you to be there early. You can't show up to an interview. If your interview is at 3 o'clock, you don't show up at 2:58 and say, "Hey, I'm here." Be a little bit early. And uh, just all those little things about life. You're other people there. You're not just responsible to yourself, but you're accountable for a whole team. And if you miss practice, you're hurting your teammates. You're hurting your team. It's not just you. And the game is bigger than you are. And I think that carries over to everyday life and things you want to accomplish and how to be successful.
So a couple things there. I want to find out about some of the key differences in the eight-man game. I want to get into a few of the maybe even the schemes, offense and defense. You said you run the ball a lot, but before we go there, you talked about, hey, we got to be committed. Your teammates are counting on you. And at small schools, you're expecting guys to be in every sport, right? Every sport needs the kids to go out and participate and play. So how did you handle multi-sport athletes and then still have expectations about maybe the off season? What did the off season look like for you when you're in a smaller school and they're doing other sports as well?
So I have an advantage. I guess all the small school kids, they are all multi-sport athletes. So they're going from football to basketball to baseball or track. And I encourage those kids. I want them out playing because, they're learning other skills that are going to actually benefit football. They're learning footwork and basketball and again, teamwork, and they're out working at the same time. So when they're participating in the other sports, it's keeping them in shape and things like that. Um, and they are getting those other skills done. And summertime is kind of, and I guess let me jump back. If a kid's running track, well, hey, now they're getting faster for football, and that's good for them. Even baseball, they're learning skills, and it all transfers over from sport to sport to sport. And I think the kids that are doing more than one sport, they're better athletes, and they kind of get an understanding of it. But as far as like the off season and I want the kids to hit the weight room all the time. And I have an advantage. I have all the high school kids. They're either in my PE classes or they're in the weight training. And so I'm able to recruit kids kind of all the time. So, and hey, I can find a way for you to get on the football field. If you're playing basketball, and I encourage kids to turn out for basketball too, and the other sports, but football, if you're playing basketball or you want to play basketball, you have to be able to dribble. If you're going to run track, probably you've got to be fast. You're going to play baseball, you've got to be able to hit a baseball. But there's so many other things I can get you to do in football. You might have not be able to catch a ball. Okay, can you throw a ball? Might not be able to throw a ball. Can you run with a ball? Or you have a high motor. I can find a place for you, blocking. Can you hit a kid? Do you have a motor? I can put you on the defense. There's so many more positions I can put you. I can put you on offense, defense. It's not so specialized like basketball and, maybe baseball and those things are. So I've got an advantage. Hey, you're a strong kid. And I use that in the weight room to motivate kids. Hey, you're pretty strong. Why don't you come out, turn out for football and see how that, it would be your benefit. And one thing I tell kids, why don't you turn out if you don't like it and you want to quit? I have no problem. At least you tried it, but I'd like you to turn out. But the off season, like especially summertime, we used to go to Butte, Montana when I was at lacrosse-washtucna. We drive clear across it. It took forever to get there. We'd go to Butte, Montana in the summer and do football camps. And it was a 4-day deal. And back then and we started that in about 2000. We get off the bus and it was full contact, everything, every day. Kids would beat the hell out of each other for 4 days, get back on the bus. And then we already had our 10 days of camp, of our own camp. And we did that for a while and it paid off and it was really good. But then the basketball coaches, we'd get back and he'd want to go and do basketball camp. It took kids a week to recuperate. And so he wasn't real pleased with me. And then we started going to Whitworth and doing that. And then usually for 8-man football, I was lucky to get 20 kids out. And so every year that's about what I get, 20 kids. And our goal started to be, let's not get kids injured. I get a couple kids with concussions. I get a kid with a twisted knee. I never had anything real serious like an ACL or MCL or anything like that, but I have sprained ankles, sprained knees, concussions, which are serious, but they'd be able to recover. Well, now the basketball coach is like, hey, I'm down 3 kids. We're going to basketball camp. So I started going, all right, got to Odessa. And then we did 1 year at Whitworth. And I said, if our goal is let's not get hurt, let's quit doing this. So we did. So we cut it back. We went 10 days of football at our camp and let's focus on what we do and getting better, put our skills in. You go to camp sometime and there's a line of 30 kids and your kid goes through and he gets 1 rep. I'm like, well, that's not doing any good. Let's do tackling and blocking and our defensive and our offensive schemes that are helping us instead of what these other coaches think. So we go 10 days. We go Monday through Friday for 2 weeks. And then, and I'm done almost before school even gets out. And now the basketball, they can go all summer, do basketball and things like that. And so that's kind of how we've evolved and what my off-season program is.
That's great. So looking into 8-man football, looked up some rules on NFHS. I already knew you have 5 men on the line instead of 7, right? And your end guys can be eligible. Do the numbers matter? That's one question. Do they have to have eligible numbers? Do numbers matter? Because I know in some levels they don't. And then I know in the championship, you're always playing on a regulation size field. I do know that you could potentially play on a narrower field. Is that what happens in Washington, or because I've actually only watched in the championship and semifinals?
So in Washington, we play on a full regulation size football field during the season. Washington, Oregon, Idaho, same football field. It's just like the 11-man numbers. You can have, this is the great thing about 8-man. You can have any number you want anytime. And that rule came about because you have so few kids and all of a sudden you've got a kid at lineman. Well, he needs to go now to a running back or vice versa. And you have to have, so instead of switching jerseys, I'm sure a long time ago, and this is, I don't know how long, but I know I've been doing this since 89. It was a rule back then. You could have any number you want. We did have a referee one time, and this is where every once in a while my frustration kicks in, where I had a guy go, well, you're not used to this is a league game. And he turns around and he said something and he goes, well, you guys aren't used to playing on a big field. And I looked at him, I go, what are you talking about? Well, and so then they don't know the rules of how many guys are supposed to be on the line of scrimmage and stuff like that. And I'm just like, okay, I would like it if they just had 8-man referees, but that would never happen. So,
right. Well, we're struggling just to get referees as it is, right? So a lot of schools have to move to Thursday games just to find officials, but I'm sure that would be frustrating to be like, hey, you're officiating this game. We probably need to know those rules. So talk to me about your offensive schemes and, what type of diversity. I know with 11-man ball, you've got spread to wing tee to single wing to whatever. How much diversity is, and then what was your preferred style of offense?
I have been the same from day one till now. I very little dabbled in other stuff. We are an I formation team. We're going to run triple option. We're going to run power football, and that's it. And now everybody lines up and they're doing the Oregon one back spread offense, shotgun stuff. And then we line up and I know they're like, man, he's running a new offense. And I just, yeah, we are. It's very few teams anymore. They're running 2 backs, I backs, or split backs under center. And we'll do a little bit of shotgun now and then, but it makes me nervous. And I know that the shotgun guys, you go to a clinic, oh, there's fewer fumbles between the center and the no, there's not. I don't care. They can throw those stats out. I'm like, the best way to get the ball is you go right up underneath center. And uh, I've done some shotgun stuff, but we still run the same exact plays, power football, option football. But I'm one of the very few rare guys that stays in that most of the game. You know, when I first started and they'd split a guy out, it was like, wow, that guy is really innovative. He's got a white out, or all of a sudden one guy, you know, they're at Colton one year, they're running trips, and we're like, what in the world is that? But now everybody's doing it, and it seems to be that I'm running the new offense.
Right. And then defensively, I'm guessing 3-2 is kind of your base defense for most people, but what did you do?
Everything.
Yeah.
And this is where I wish I would have. I'm typically a three-man front. We run a 3-3. I and for years from 2002 until I got to Odessa 20, I think I switched over in 2018. We ran 3-2 zone defense, and I was one of two programs that did it. And the other one was Wayne Compton and PL, and I was at a clinic one time, and he came over, and I didn't know who he was, but I was just there. I had my name tag on. I'm sitting outside the clinic in between sessions. And he goes, hey, you mind if I sit here? And I go, yeah. And I didn't know who he was. And he introduces himself. And he goes, you want to talk defense? Because I think there's two teams or two guys that coach zone defense in the state of Washington. They're both sitting at this table. And I was like, yeah. So we started up that. He was right. We were the only ones that ran true zone all the time. And no one else had ever done it. And we compared notes, and we're still friends, and we talk a lot all the time. So, but now I started going in 2018-19 more man-to-man, running a three-man front. It was just because the athletes we had.
Mhm.
Zone's tough to teach, but I just thought, geez, let's line up man-to-man. I got so many studs over here. They can all guard. I've got backups that can defend dudes. We're fast. Let's just get after them that way, and we've stayed with it ever since.
Yeah.
You can see at Wilbur, we had two big defensive tackles the last couple of years, so we ran a 4-2. And uh, so it all depends, but there's a ton of stuff that you can do. I had an assistant coach at lacrosse one time. It's Dan Hill. He's at not Centralia, WF West.
Mm-hmm.
And he used to drive him nuts how many offenses set. He was my D coordinator. He's a guy, 8-man guys are running more sets than, you know, and the rules you have to have for 8-man against even though 11-man. He's like, God, there's so many gaps and holes and things you got to worry about. I'm like, yeah, it's a nightmare on 8-man's. 8-man is a nightmare on defensive coordinators.
Mm-hmm. And I'm guessing tackling becomes even more of a premium because you've got all that space, and a kid with speed is just, I mean, he's gone. The scores, I mean, there's 50, 60 point scores by both teams on a regular basis. Although I know some of your best teams, you didn't give up hardly any points at all. But talk to me about maybe some drills that you did to, solidify your tackling and speak to the importance of that in the 8-man game.
I made a huge jump in our defense. We used to be all offensive oriented. We're going to outscore you. Tackling was an afterthought. Defense was an afterthought. And then my defensive coordinator, Justin Zebel, I brought him over from lacrosse. He had never coached. And then he was with me at lacrosse for 3 or 4 years. And then I got the job over here. And the first year that I had the head coach, I called him up, said, hey, you want to come over here? And yeah. And I go, so here's the deal. You are going to come up with a ton of tackling drills, defensive schemes. It's all you. And I go, you learn that stuff. And it was just the biggest thing was basic open field tackling, how to do it. And we did it every single day. And the kid's like, oh, this is boring. And he looked at me, he goes, is winning boring? And they're like, no. And he goes, this is why we're winning and we are consistent. And it was, can you tackle in the open field that was keeping your feet alive? And he had a great line. He goes, tackling and blocking are the same thing. Can you keep your feet moving and driving? Can you keep your feet when you're blocking? It's just like tackling. Can you keep your feet moving so you're not lunging at guys and keeping your feet under you? And we just drill and drill. And he would come up with several one drill we did every single day was just Technique, technique, technique. And then whatever we were lacking in the game before, if it was open field tackling, we'd go work on open field. If it was taking on blockers and getting off those, then that was our next tackling. But if it was, are we having trouble on the inside run with tackling? We'd work on our inside run tackling for the week. Are we having trouble containing and getting off those guys and then making them tackle? So we always did the same tackling drill, and then he'd add what did we have trouble with. Are we having trouble bracking a kid? One guy's coming from the inside, one guy's coming from the outside, and the angles we take, and we would work on that for the whole week. But it's just repetition and doing it right. And if a kid makes a mistake, do it again until they can get it. And it's like, all right.
I'm not gonna lie, I was kind of hoping you're gonna pull a rodeo scheme out, like for calf roping or something. That was what you did, but I'm just messing with you, Coach. I'm pretty sure it was Vince Lombardi that said football is blocking and tackling, and everything else is mythology, right?
Yeah, that it is. And that's exactly right. And I'm old school. And I'll tell you what I told my coach too, my Z-Bell. I used to be all over defense, and my D coordinator, I drive them nuts. I'm talking to them all the time. Hey, what are we doing? We need to be blitzing. We need to be running this. And they're like, Coach. And he would go, would you shut up for a minute? And I'm on the headphones. He's like, Coach, I got it. Finally, I go, you know what? I'm going to give you the defense. I'm not going to say a word. But here's what you're going to do. You're going to get 4 stops. You get 4 stops. You can do anything you want. You can bring 8 guys. You can line up with guys, everyone 15 yards back, bring them full speed when the ball snap, time it up. You can blitz guys. You can drop your D ends into the pass coverage and I don't care. You get me 4 stops. He would come to practice. Hey, what if we lined up and stacked these guys and we ran a twist here or we brought the nose guard around the DN and DN comes through and I go, I don't care. I don't want to know what you're doing. Get me 4 stops. If you're not getting me 4 stops, then we'll talk. But he got me 4 stops and he'd start to talk. Hey, what if I go, listen, I don't know. And even in games, I'm like, God, what are you doing now? And he's like, that was pretty awesome, wasn't it? That was a stunt with our nose guard and our D end. And I'm like, there you go. And that helped us immensely. If sometimes I just get out of the way.
Yeah. And I think the value of giving assistants, here's your job, I trust you, get it done, right? Like, and they buy in so much more than if we micromanage, and I'm a firm believer in that. So so I want to talk a little bit about your four-peat that you had when you were at lacrosse-washtucna, right? You win 4 championships in a row, and in that you had a 49-game winning streak, and which was a record for a while that Wiley Allred broke that one. So I want to hear about that run, the championships, winning those first ones, and then also the streak. And when the streak ended, was it more of a disappointment, or was it relief and a sense of accomplishment when that streak ended?
When that streak ended, we saw it coming. We were playing Garfield Palouse, as a matter of fact. And we start out the game. It was back and forth. And then my tailback, he was actually out for that game because on game number 49, we traveled to Harrison, Idaho and played Kootenai, Idaho. And we're beating the tar out of them. And like I said, we're tailback oriented, I formation. I got a good kid at tailback. Well, all of a sudden he goes down and puts his hand out or his arm, dislocates his elbow. And Kootenai, Idaho is located on the opposite side of where on Lake Coeur d'Alene in the middle of nowhere. Their ambulance wasn't the greatest and his elbow was going the opposite way. And I'm like, oh, geez. So we get him. And after that, our tailback we had to take a tight end and put him there, and he wasn't nearly as good. And his first game of the year, his first time he played there, and they started catching up, and it came down to the last play of the game where they threw a bomb. And so anyway, that was a relief to get the 49, and all the kids who were in that run that had graduated were at that game. We had like 200-300 fans in Idaho. It was awesome. But then we turn around the next week and we're playing Garfield Palouse, where I get my start. It was a home game. And in the first quarter, we had taken our quarterback and put him at the running back and going, okay. And this kid's a stud. Well, he gets hurt and breaks his collarbone. Now I don't have a quarterback and I don't have a tailback. And they beat us pretty handily, and you could see it coming. And it was tough to have to lose in first time, and this is in our fifth year, but we saw that one coming. We thought, and we knew it was going to end sometime. But also it was kind of relief.
Mhm.
And the pressure put on was self-imposed. It was never like, oh, you better win, or it was, but you want to keep winning in that pressure. So it took some relief off us. And the year before that, and we probably had one of the best teams I ever had in 2005. We were big, we were physical. I had kids that had started since they were sophomores. We go down and play this team in Oregon. And the first game of our year, we went down and played the number one team in Oregon who had already beaten this team.
Mhm.
And we just pummeled the number one team. Well, they beat this team. Well, we traveled down almost to Bend, Oregon and play them. And they're beating us all game long. At halftime, they're up 2 touchdowns. I was like, man, we can't stop them. They were a lot better. Our kids like, oh, we beat a team that just beat them. We'll tear this team apart. So finally, in the fourth, we only gave up 1 touchdown in the second half. We came back and we started playing a lot better, but it came down to the last play where they ran a trick play and a kid was wide open and they couldn't get the ball to him because we got a sack. And it was like, wow, we were really lucky. They had driven the ball down to the 20-yard line and they had no timeout. So we won that one. But, we were lucky. And I just remember during the game going, we're going to lose we're at 48. We're going to lose this game, and it's going to be disappointing because our team should easily handle them. So to make a long story even longer, that's how that goes.
All right. We just scheduled the time that we're meeting today, right now, just after the Seahawks game, and Seahawks wore their throwback uniform. Somewhere I got this hat signed by Kenny Easley. Just got this weekend at a FCA fundraiser. Great game. Unfortunately, they lost to Tampa Bay 38-35 at the end. It was fun though because there was 3 2A players in that game, so fairly small school, Washington. Emeka Egbuka played at Stillicum, and Cade Otten played at Tumwater, and for the Seahawks, Abe Lucas at Archbishop Murphy. So fun seeing some local guys there. You mentioned 200 people traveled to Idaho. That's any high school to have 200 people travel out of state that's really good, whatever size school you're at. But in 2018, you got to be one of the coaches that went up top and raised the 12th man flag after you won a state championship and you're honored by the Seahawks. Can you tell me about that atmosphere and what it was like to go up top and raise that flag?
Oh, the whole thing, even before that, they bring you down to the field, they walk you around, they introduce all the coaches. And it was either in 2018, I got to do it twice in 2019, and then they have the coach of the year, and I'm looking at Sid Otten. It's last year. Well, he's going to get coach of the year, and he did. And then we go up and raise the flag. I mean, in my wildest dreams, I never would have thought I'd get to do that. And they take care of you so well. At the time, my favorite team is just because of players. It was the Denver Broncos. Loved John Elway just because he pulled miracles out of his hat all the time. And then, I was like, God, the Seahawks are giving me free tickets to go to these games. They're giving me, and I got 2 jerseys with my names on the back. They're authentic Seahawks. It was awesome. And then they treat you so well. They bring you around to the field. They give you dinner, seats to the game, and then to go up as the 12th man. Very few people get to do that. And I got to do it twice. I'm like, I'm extremely lucky, and now I'm an absolute Seahawk fan. I thought it was fantastic. One time I took my wife, one time I took my son, and that was a Monday night football game, and he got to sit there and see Monday Night Football. And as a matter of fact, I don't know how, but they did Monday Night Football Coach of the Week, and it happened to be me. Someone sent my name in, and so they had videotaped one of our practices. They videotaped some pregame stuff before we took the field, and then they played it like as a commercial before the Monday Night Football game. Said Coach Jeff Nelson from Odessa, and they showed me in practice, and that were making the playoffs and things like that, and my record. I was like, wow, and it showed on ESPN.
Wow.
And I was like, yeah. And a friend of mine called me and goes, how did you get on ESPN? I go, I didn't even see it played. And I go, so I got it recorded. Someone sent it. I've got it on my phone still. So There's some neat things from being 8-man football that I've gotten that you're not going to get anywhere else. Well, obviously because of the Seahawks.
Yeah. Well, and I'll also throw in a for the Washington State Football Coach Association, because you have to be a member to be eligible for the Seahawks Coach of the Week or Coach of the Year there. Um, and it's just one of those kind of perks that they treat you really well. I've had a
They
chance
really do.
as Coach of the Week before, never Coach of the Year, like being down there as one of the finalists there, but it's a pretty special deal, and again, that's another benefit of being a part of the Coaches Association. Coach, I want to throw some other numbers at you and talk about your 2018 and 2019 Odessa teams. All right, so I'm going to throw some numbers, and they're pretty impressive here. You shattered some records in that 2018 championship game. You're playing the defending state champions from Elmira Cooley Heartline, and they'd won 2 of the last 3 state championships. And the score at the end of the first quarter was 40-0. You were up 40-0 at the end of the first quarter. That's a record for a state championship game. And it looks like you may have called things off a little bit. Ended up 63-12. But coming out of the gates, 3 turnovers first quarter. Tell me a little bit about that game and just that experience of putting 40 up in the first quarter of a championship.
Well, they go back like 20 some years, even before that. The previous record was Bridgeport, scored 38 points in the first quarter against Odessa. So I know there were a lot of fans in from Odessa like, yeah, we finally got that out of the record book, that we are not the losing team to give up 38 points to a team. They're like, thanks, Nelson. I was like, I'm trying. We played them earlier in the year at ACH at their place, beat them fairly handily. It was a good game, but we were never behind. They gave us a good game, and so we kind of knew that we would probably win. But from the get-go, we stopped them right away, created a turnover, and they had good kids. They couldn't stop us, and we were prepared. I kind of knew that some things they were going to change up on defense, so we prepared for they were going to run 3 or 4 different defenses, and we sat there and practiced against that. And they were jump defenses. They'd go from a 3-man to a 4-man front, or a 4 to a 3 before we'd snap the ball, and we practiced that. So everything they did, we knew was coming. We just happened to say they're not going to do this. They can't sit there and do the exact same thing. And our kids were so ready for it. Mm-hmm. And, most of those kids, they know each other. They know the ACH kids, they're friends with them, but from the get-go, they couldn't stop us. And it was unbelievable what we did. It caught me by surprise. It's not like I'd ever gone, man, I pretty much knew we'd score 40. I was expecting a 4-quarter game come down to the last minute. But our kids, they played well. That's, we peaked at the right time. Mm-hmm. And I think it definitely did help that we beat them earlier in the season. Not only did we beat them, but we beat them at their place. So I think, just the psychological aspect.
Right. And then maybe even got better after that. And I saw a quote from you early in that 2019 season that, hey, I think we're even better this year, right? So here's some numbers from 2019. Going into the state championship game, you were out, the average score of your games was 77-8. So 77 is a big number, but then, I'm expecting, you're going to give up 20, 30 points a game at 8-man at least with a good season on defense, and you're allowing 8 points a game. And your starters on defense had only allowed 12 points the whole season up to that point in time. And then your running back in the championship game, Marcus King, 6 foot, 175 pounds, had 380 yards, 6 touchdowns, 4 2-point conversions. So he alone scored 44 points, which broke the previous record of 40. But it's not like you were just feeding him, because another back had 15 carries, Josh Clark for 162 yards and 2 more touchdowns. The team had 555 yards rushing. So those are records. And here's another, maybe people don't know about this record. There hadn't been a field goal kicked in a 1B championship game until Jeff Jr. went out there, your son, went out and kicked a 23-yard field goal as well. So lots of numbers, lots of records. Tell me a little bit about that game. And I've heard some reporters say they think that may have been the best 1B team in state history. You also coached some great ones at lacrosse-washtucna. You've seen some others. You were at Wilbur, Creston, Keller with last year's championship. Where would you place that team? And tell me a little bit about that group.
Well, first I'll make a correction. My son's name is Jet. It looks like Jeff.
Gotcha.
And the King kid, we went out there and I go, hey, and it was after I think they turned the ball over on downs. And so I call the timeout and I go, listen, this game's out of control. We know it. I go, if you guys, someone breaks one, let's get a record of a field goal.
Mhm.
First play, the King kid breaks it and he gets to the 2 yard line and took a knee. And I was like, oh, that was so. And so what he gave up on that too, I think he tied he needed one or two more points to get another record. It would have put our team over the ACH when they won the state championship a couple of years before that. I think they scored. I'm not sure, but it would have put us over the total team count. And I had fans going, Nelson, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm gonna get it. And it wasn't because he was my kid of field goal. There's no field goal, so we gave up 2 records to get one.
Mhm.
But I didn't know. And I just remember the King kid. I go, what'd you say in the huddle after going for the extra, or when we kicked the field? It goes, Jet, you better make this.
Right.
Such an unselfish act on his part
Mhm.
that he gave that up. But, the other thing, as far as scoring points and how good that team was, if they were to play our best team out of lacrosse, that would be a game.
Mhm.
I couldn't say that the team from Odessa is the best team or lacrosse. They're totally different teams. The team from Odessa is built on speed. Our skill position players were, there's no better skill position than the 5 guys I put out there. You can't get better. The team from lacrosse had dudes up front. They were big and physical, mean and nasty. And then, so I think the problem where lacrosse would have is playing them is the skill position kids on the outside were juniors. They were a little lacking experience. And so I don't know if lacrosse could stop us if we got to the outside. Then again, I don't know if we could stop lacrosse up the middle, and they were banging away. So it would have been a great game. And I've been asked that question a lot of times, which is the best team ever? And I don't know. So Bill Alexander, coach from Quincy, and he was probably the biggest supporter of 8-man football and supported me. And he passed away a few years ago, but he always bragged, oh, Bridgeport had the best team back in 89, I think it was. They beat Odessa that year. That's the greatest 8-man football team that there ever was. And I go, Bill, if you guys were so great, you would have won more than one in a row. And I've got a group with 4 and a group with 2. And that shut him up pretty quick.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I know Coach Alexander quite well from coaching the Earl Barden All-State game a few
yeah.
times, and may he rest in peace. He was a character, man. I remember he was still kind of old-fashioned in some ways, and didn't want people to wear hats inside ever. And we actually had another small school coach from Morton White Pass was coaching with me, and I was his assistant that year, and he got caught wearing his hat inside, and Coach Alexander gave him what for, and then the rest of the week he would like sneak his hat on and look around, and I'd be looking out for Coach Alexander because he was Coach Aaron was a big guy, but he was a little scared of Coach Alexander, so.
The Earl Barden Classic is also one of the turning points of my career. Doug Curtis was at the time was principal at lacrosse. He said, and he was used to coach football at Colfax, won a state championship there, and he'd come down to the field every time we had a good year and help out. And he goes, you need to get involved with that. And I go, well, how? And he goes, you call him. He gave me Alexander's name, and he goes, you go and you be a gopher. I learned more there being a gopher and watching practices and how guys did things. I'm looking at some schemes even. But then all of a sudden, after doing that for a few years, I was an assistant coach. Then one year I was an 8-man head football coach and some of the guys I had on the team were absolutely, it was all that year, all the East Side guys had won the state championship. So I had like, it was the Pullman kids, and one of them played Canadian football, and it was an all-pro Canadian. My team was absolutely stacked.
Mhm.
And I had brought 3 guys from lacrosse with me, and they were like, you guys play 8-man football? How in the hell did anybody compete with you? And I'm like, well, they really didn't.
Mhm.
And they went toe to toe, and most of those guys even started, they did start in the classic there. And so, we've had, like you said, we've had some dudes.
Yeah. I had a chance to coach a couple times in that game on the west side, and I want to say probably 2012, and I was an assistant there, and we won that game. And then maybe 2016 or so, 2017, I got to be the head coach for the West, and we had a squad too. We had three college quarterbacks that I rotated through, and it was a dang receiver from Wiley's Royal that we couldn't stop, and that he had like three touchdown catches, and the East beat us in that game, but. That's a blast. And if people aren't aware of that one, it's the all-state game really for the 2As, 1As, and B schools. And it's cool because people come together and play from the different levels. And yeah, that's a great experience. I can't say enough about that program and keeping that thing going. So um, now, I want to talk about some of the records and things. When I was coaching, sometimes I would be aware of whether it was season records or career records, or you get up in a game and I did a lot of work to preserve the records for Lakewood High School. So I had a lot in my mind. And if I knew a kid had a chance in a game, first thing is got to control the game first, right?
Yeah.
And then once you have that, if you can get something for a kid to honor him and get a record, that's a pretty cool deal. Is that something when you were so talented and so good, and maybe you knew you were going to win most of your games pretty handily? Was that something that maybe was used as a motivator at all for you, or what were your thoughts on your records and using that to honor your kids?
That's the one thing you go through the record books. And, we have some of the state championship ones, but you go through and you look at most carries in a game, especially regular season, most carries in a game, touchdowns in a game, rushing yards in a game. None of it's lacrosse-washtucna, none of it's Odessa, just about. It's really, passing yards, all that stuff. We never went after it. It was almost impossible. My whole goal was, and this kind of made some of my play, made my son mad. We get up on teams, you guys are out of the game. And they're like, Coach, we got to play a quarter today. And I'm like, and you got to see the big picture. And the big picture is we're not here. They wanted to play more. And I'm like, I get that. But the biggest picture is that championship. And we're going after that. If we get a couple kids hurt because I'm trying to out there get you some records, that's just stupid. And so they'd sit there and get mad at me. But I never purposely, I went after one record the whole time and we were playing. It was by accident. And it was a passing touchdowns in a game. And we scored right away, like the first play on a game through a pass. And we had a team that it was good, but they weren't great. We're like, we're probably not going to win a state championship. We get a turnover. Next play, we ran the same play, other side, scored another touchdown. Well, I knew the record was 10 touchdowns in a game. I go, we have two, and there's literally 2 minutes off the clock. Mm-hmm. So it got down into the game, and we got 10. And what I was doing, I was playing our starting defense or our starting offense and JV defense, and they'd score. And well, we go out and score in a couple plays pass, and they started dropping 7 guys into pass coverage. And on one of the plays, the quarterback took off and ran and scored. And I go, there's a minute left in the game. What are you doing? You got to throw the football. So he tied the record and he looked at me and I just went, what are you going to do now? And he goes, well, let's let them score. I go, well, they're scoring. I don't know if we're going to get the ball back. And we didn't get the ball back. But that was really one of the only records I purposely went after, and we tied it. It was kind of neat. But the other ones, we've got a couple kids who have interceptions in a game, and there's several lacrosse-washtucna kids that got it. And one kid, I told him, and it was Matt Martin. He played at Eastern, was a captain on their national championship team. He had 5 interceptions in one game, and I go, the next one I want you to knock down late in the game. He knocks it down. Later we find out he was one away from the state record. He just goes, oh, Coach. I go, that happens. We didn't know.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I never went after records. Going into the state championship game, I knew what some of them were, but we never purposely were out to, we're out to try to get wins.
Right. And then that brings up another point. How do you balance? And obviously one of the reasons why you pulled your guys in the first quarter is you don't want to get your kids hurt when the game's done. Right. Kids want to play. And I've read some of your stuff where kids will say, hey, you know what? I didn't touch the ball more than 3 series and then I'm out or whatever it is. At what point, or is there a point where you felt like, 1, for injury, and then 2, maybe not trying to embarrass high school kids at some other program, especially an 8-man that can score at any moment's notice, like the scores get crazy. Is there a point that you would really start to call things off? Or is there a point in 8-man football? And I realize, you said, hey, when we were going for the record, as long as they were scoring, it allowed me to feel like I can keep scoring. I had one game in
Yeah.
Lakeland where we scored our school record 81 points, and I felt like we could do it because the other team scored just enough. They had 31 by the end, right? It was back and forth, like, okay, we can keep going a little bit. But tell me about that balance and what your decision is there.
So when I go to pull my kids, and it depends how late far into the game are we. And so, I put 40 points up on a team, like even in the state championship. Well, I can't pull all my starters out, put my freshmen. What does my second team look like? When I was at lacrosse one year, I could pull my starters out, put my next team in because there's 6 seniors, two juniors, and a sophomore, and they can protect themselves. They had, 3 and 4 years of football, most of them. They're seniors. And so they could compete out there and not get the crap kicked out of them. But do I want to sit there and pull all my starters? Now, here, the other coach leaves his starters in and he's got 2 or 3 seniors. I've got freshmen.
Mhm.
And, you've got a 105-pound freshman who's not very skilled. And you have a senior who's probably a little mad that they got their tail kicked. And now he's looking for payback and he's going to nail some kids. So, that's not good either. So usually there's that. I'll try it out, say, how are we going to do? Let's see what we can do with our offense against their first team defense. If it's not going very well, maybe I have to put a couple kids up on the offensive line to block for
Mhm.
them. And that's one thing we would kind of do that. And then a lot of times I'd leave my first team defense in there and let our second team go. But if they want a wholesale change, then I'll wholesale.
Mhm.
But I'm not going to let my freshmen go up against their seniors and get the crap kicked out of them. We'll try it a little bit. And I've done it before where uh, I put my freshmen out there and a couple sophomores and they left their starters. And now they're blitzing on 6 guys. Nick's played their blitzing 7 and we're going backward. And I was going to throw a screen. Well, then my quarterback, he's scared to death. He
Yeah.
can't even see the guy. He throws it to him. And we did that and then I send my first team out. We punt the ball. Defense stays out there and stops it. Well, they're doing it again. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to put up with this one more series after that. Usually I'll call a timeout and go, hey, coach, I'll walk over at the timeout while he's huddled with his team and go, I'm going to pull my kids if you pull yours. If not, I'm going to end this thing and it's going to be bad.
Mhm.
What do you want to do?
Yeah.
Brandon Walsh at ACH was really good. One year when had his team was mainly sophomores, it was 2019. I'm out there with seniors and we're putting it to them pretty good. And I went out at halftime before we took the field and I just go, Brandon, what do you want to do? And he goes, I'm going to keep my kids out there for a little bit. We want to try to get something accomplished that's positive. And he goes, keep your kids out there as long as I do. And he goes, but when we do switch, my backups are going to struggle against your backups. And I go, okay. But he was very upfront, said, we're going to try to get something positive. And they didn't score, but then he subbed and he threw up the white flag and I go, okay, you guys go.
Yeah.
And
That's
so,
great. I love that you communicate and that, that's something that I hadn't even considered too much, not being at the 8-man level is obviously I know that depth and how many guys you have in your roster is an issue, but even putting guys out as subs could be difficult in a safety issue. So yeah,
yeah,
interesting.
big schools, the freshmen probably aren't practicing with the seniors. They've got their varsity team. They have a JV team, probably we have one team.
Right.
And we don't even have JV. We have, maybe 20 kids, and the
Yeah.
20 kids, how many finished the season because of injuries? There's times we suited up, 13 kids. Well, what do you want me to do?
Right. Yeah, no, great point. Um, so I read up some stuff when I was preparing for this on, one of the things you enjoy is relationships and funny stories and silly stories. And this story I've got to ask about sounds like there was a broken down bus and like a house that was Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Like, I got to know the details on that story, Coach.
We're coming back, and from the Wenatchee area. I think we were playing Antioch or someone, and I don't know where we were, or how we got back home because there's a couple different routes. I'm not paying attention. All of a sudden, the bus overheats, and there's not a light. There's nothing around, and someone goes, "Hey!" So my 2 assistants get out. They walk up this hill, and they go, "Hey, there's a house up here. We can get the bus there." So we drive in and stop. and it is an old farm. I'm like, God, is this thing still in existence? Well, I look and the lights are kind of on inside, but you've got old windmills and old fences, and there's like the old pump that you use your hands. I'm like, oh, for crying out loud. So my assistants go up to the house and the TV's on, and I'm telling the kids, shut up and stay in the bus. If they come out here with a gun or something, I don't want them shooting, because they think we're breaking into their house. So we're knocking. And then all of a sudden, one of my kids is peeking in the windows going, I can see people in there, but they're not coming. I go, would you guys get out of their windows? You're probably scaring the crud out of them. And the whole time I'm like, what have we gotten into here? We are in the middle of nowhere. No one knew where we were except the bus driver. And the whole time I'm like, God, this is just how the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, you go for help and then you're never seen from again. And it was interesting to say the least, but we filled and it was the bus overheated. So we filled up and we called for help. And we couldn't even get cell reception. We had to walk up another hill to get cell, but the kids had Gatorade bottles of the water that was left over, put in the radiator and drove halfway home that way until we could get, I think they met us with another bus and we switched it out.
Wow, that is a crazy story. It reminds me, my family was in Idaho one time. We're driving. I think we were heading over to Yellowstone or something, but we stopped along the way. My daughter was really into fossil digs and stuff, and there was a place you could go dig fossils, and there was no cell service, there was nothing. It was out in the middle of nowhere, and I went, hey, I'm going to go ask this place, and I drove up this driveway, and it kept going, and then there was just a door that had, the screen door was swinging back and forth, and I'm like knocking, hello, and I get in and the girls are like, maybe you shouldn't go. When I got back in the car, I said, we got to go now. They're like, seriously? I'm like, no, it's not. I messed with them, but it reminded me, and we were in a dangerous position if somebody had bad intentions. It's a little spooky, but Coach, are there any assistants? I know you mentioned Justin Zeeble. Is there any assistants that were really impactful to you that you want to mention?
Well, Kermit Wiggin, definitely. He was my first assistant coach, and he was kind of my moral compass. And I assisted him in basketball. And I was an assistant coach for 4 years in football. And right off the bat, I was the JV basketball coach, and he was the head coach. So we hung out a little bit. And then when the job opened up, I took the football job, and I go, hey, do you want to assist me in football? But he was always like, hey, and I get on kids pretty hard. And he's like, you better back off this kid. You've got to his point. I'm like, all right. And there was just always things he'd sit there and say, hey, let's do this now. You've made your point, or let's get on with this. But he was always, let's do things the right way all the time. He dealt with a lot of times with parents. If there was an issue coming up, he'd see it and he'd go, stuff that I was ignorant to, going, God, what do you mean? Is there a problem? And he goes, well, and he would take care of it. He'd take care of administration. He was wonderful that way. The other one would be Doug Curtis. He gave me, and like I said, he was a state championship coach out of Colfax. And he would give me, I'd sit there and, hey, Doug, and he helped me with my zone defense. He would sit there and talk about his zone defense. And I found this book from Montana, and it was just, they sent it to me, a fax, not even a fax, through the mail. It was just a photocopy deal of best plays, best defenses, and I go, is this what you're talking about? And it was exactly what he had been talking about for defense, running his own, but he would always talk about the 4-3 defense that he ran at Colfax. And he goes, yeah, this is exactly the same exact thing, same concept. So we implemented that together. He'd give me drills for cutback lanes, how to stop that, give me tackling drills. If I was like, blocking, this team's going to run this defense. How do we block this play? And you go, well, you double team here, you chip the heroes. Things I didn't even know. Mm-hmm. And it just made me such a better coach. And I still call him. I called him the other day, hey, and he's just to talk to him. So we're always in touch. I think he's the superintendent. I don't even know if he's at lacrosse anymore, to tell you the truth. I think he's totally retired, but I don't know. He could still be the super there now.
Yeah, great being able to reconnect. I know for myself, being out of the game for 3 years now, just missing out on the relationships with my staff, players, and so forth is what I miss the most. But Coach, is there any advice or parting comments that you would like to give for maybe coaches that are coming up through the ranks nowadays?
Um, I would just say this is almost a negative, but I find this to be true. Any rule that you have, stick to it.
Mhm.
I basically came down and I had one rule, and it was don't let your teammates down. Um, and Kermit told me this one time, and he just said, all parents want kids to be disciplined. They just don't want their kid to be disciplined. And he nailed it. And there are things that were black and white. Hey, if you do this, here's the punishment. But a lot of times it comes to someone's own kids, it doesn't apply. And I thought, that's so just take that into consideration. Some other things I would just say is do what you do coaching. And, we'd get to the playoffs. I'm like, hey, let's put these 5 new plays in. Let's run a couple new defenses. I'm like, no, stop that. And we played a couple teams last year and the year before we get to the playoffs. I'm like, man, I've never seen that you guys run that defense and I have 9 films on you.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, we're right from the first play. I'm going, we're going to win this game. They're doing something they've never done before. And I saw that on offense one time. We were a no huddle team at Odessa, and we're playing another team that's no huddle. And I was like, man, this is a fast paced game. We get to the semifinals, and they're now slowing it down. They're huddling up. They're waiting till the play clock ran down. And I just remember the first series go, that game's over. They've taken themselves out of what their kids are used to, and that tempo, we won.
Mm-hmm.
And sure enough, I mean, I guess it was a good try. You have to try something because we're scoring 40 points in the first quarter, but I think you stay with what got you there and you don't waver on it.
Yeah. Good advice, Coach. Hey, first time talking to you at length in person, other than hello, maybe at a camp or Earl Barden game. So it's been a real pleasure. Hopefully we can stay in contact in the future, Coach. Thank you so much.
I really appreciate this. This has been fantastic. Thank you for the opportunity.